All right, guys, thank you for coming back and tuning back into another episode of the Uncle Sonny Project Live, where we're talking to different individuals to expand your mind and kind of give you a shift of perspective so that you can choose one that's most beneficial for you in moving along your journey into your goal. Today, we have the very big pleasure of speaking with Jason Matthews, who is a powerhouse at what he does. And I could say that from personal experience. We've had a couple of conversations and he's just blown my mind and opened my mind up to so many different avenues when it comes to relationships. He is a relationship specialist, and he's here to teach people how to overcome their inner challenges and create the relationships that make them feel understood, respected, and valued. Thank you for joining us today, Jason.
Thanks, Tal, for having me. This is really great.
I'm super excited. So I want to give you the opportunity to just jump in and tell us a little bit more about yourself, about your story, and how did this conversation come about?
So the idea of relationships is something that I have actually been struggling with since I was about 15 years old, and realizing that there was something that I seemed to be missing in how to interact with other people. And I was determined to figure out what that was. So at a very early age, I learned the power of just being quiet and observing, and just really seeing what it is people do, how they interact, how they show that they relate with one another and that they are creating community, and why that's so important. And as I continued doing this, I began to see that there was a way that people interact when they are truly connected, and there was a way that people act when they are pretending to be connected. And so it became that became my next curiosity. Like, well, what's the difference? What creates that real connection versus that fake connection? Where does it exist, and how can we overcome that? And I found that it exists, well, everywhere. Every interaction that you have, whether it be with your life partner, spouse, whatever you want to call them, whether it be with a business partner, coworker, boss, subordinate, however you interact with people professionally, even your own family, there are dynamics of real connection and that fake connection. And it all comes back to the way that we interact with ourselves, and how we see ourselves in the way that we interact with other people. And I realized that in order for us to understand how we interact, we first have to understand that there are only two states that a person can ever be in. And we can only be in one of those at a time. One of those is fear, and the other one is curiosity. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share a little story that really helps illustrate this.
Let's do it.
So it's actually a Cherokee story that a lot of people might know. Mm-hmm. So this Cherokee elder was sitting down with his grandson, and he said, I want to let you know that inside every human being, there are two wolves, a black wolf and a white wolf. The black wolf is fear. It is fueled by anger, by resentment, by superiority, by dissatisfaction, by neglect, and it has all these, and it helps us to feel all these things. There's also a white wolf, which is the wolf of curiosity. And I use these are my own terms. This is the wolf that feels love, feels benevolence, feels mercy, kindness. It seeks to understand. And these wolves are constantly in conflict with one another inside of each one of us. And so the grandson thinks for a second and says to the elder, which one will win? And the answer that everyone knows is the one you feed. But here's the thing. If you're only feeding one wolf, if you're only feeding the white wolf, and the black wolf isn't being fed, what's happening? You are neglecting something that is very important, because the black wolf, even though it's the wolf of fear, it also helps us to survive. It helps us be vigilant, helps us understand danger, helps us know when it is time to think for ourselves in order to get back to a point where we can feel safe. And if we neglect that part of us, then when we feel at our lowest, when we're either hungry, lonely, tired, when we are just at our worst, it is going to hijack us. And it is going to make us feel an emotion we didn't necessarily want to feel because it has to be fed. And it is going to steal the food in order to get that nutrients.
Mhm.
So what if instead of just focusing on one wolf, you feed both wolves correctly? You understand when to give attention to the wolf of fear and when to give attention to the wolf of curiosity. And knowing that each one is going to have your best interest at heart. What's going to happen is you're going to have both wolves work for you rather than fighting one another. They're going to be working in a way that is going to help you be the best person you can be. And so I wanted to figure out how I could help people understand that within themselves, as well as feeling like there was nothing wrong with them. That the way they are is the way that they're supposed to be because it's how they were built. Basically helping them overcome the feelings of shame, of guilt, and of resentment. The feelings that we feel when we believe we've done something bad. Think about when your parents told you, don't do that. And they're like, okay, that feeling like I did something wrong, so I must feel bad. I displeased someone.
Mm-hmm.
By recognizing that the emotions that you have are all correct, it helps to alleviate those feelings of guilt, shame, and resentment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what it is I strive to help people with, because when they can overcome those feelings within themselves, they can enter more in the moment and more in present in a state of curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And being in a state of curiosity is where we learn. It's where we love. It's where we live. And it's where we have that social interaction. It's what I have been taught to be called social engagement, that highest level of survival that we have that allows us to build community with other people.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that answers your question.
Oh, not see, like I said, he's a powerhouse. He's a powerhouse, ladies and gentlemen, chock full of value, chock full of perspective. And yeah, when I'm listening to you tell the story about the wolves, I'm like, okay, yeah, no, tell the story. I've heard this one before, but definitely share it because not everybody has heard the story about the two wolves, but you were able to take it a step further. And for that, I really appreciate you because both wolves are essential to your experience. Like when I believe wholeheartedly, what you resist will persist. So the negative things that I have been feeling, throughout my life and my journey, the things that I try to avoid, the things that I try to distract myself, typically still run in the background and still do their own thing. And like you said, eventually they're just going to hijack, and take what they need, and I think that when you say things like that, it actually resonates in so many different areas for me, like with society where we have the rich and we have the poor, and we have good and bad, of positive and negative, bunch of different things where you can apply that same message to so many different areas of your life, and that is super valuable. How? Go ahead.
I was going to say, just that is so true, especially when you're talking about like rich and poor. You're going to have those two extremes. They have to exist. There's always a middle ground in between, but those two limitations must be there because we have to know when something ends and when it begins. And by understanding that, if you take it in the right context and you realize, okay, these are the two extremes, I can either resent them and fight them and be at their mercy, or I can find a way to accept them and then work within those limitations to be able to get exactly what I need and be able to do what I need to get done so that I know where my place is within that spectrum.
Mm-hmm. And that's super important. What has been your journey with relationships and becoming introspective enough to navigate them in a way that's most beneficial for you?
Well, it actually started in 2004 when I enlisted in the Army. And I didn't really have an idea of who I was or what I wanted to be. I knew that from an early age I was destined for greatness, as we all do, but I just didn't know how that was going to manifest or what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized I knew that the military is great for building structure, so the Army is the life for me, and spent 10 years in the Army. 60 of those years were as an enlisted, 4 more as an officer. And as I navigated that playing field, I realized that I make a terrible soldier. And because I don't have the same value that the Army has, which is shut up, listen, do what you're told, and don't be curious, just do what I say. And I'm like, well, no. So I got into trouble a lot, and I let down my superiors a lot because they had an expectation of what I was going to provide and what I was going to do. Excuse me. And for the most part, I was not willing to live within that expectation. I wanted to know the meaning behind things because I saw that there were gross inefficiencies in the way that people were doing things. And there were better ways to do them. But because it's the way that they've always been done, shut up and do your job and don't question it. So after I deployed to Afghanistan in 2011, I realized that everything I wanted to accomplish in the military was done. So I spent the next, 4 years? Because I was discharged in 2015. The next 4 years, I just spent kind of just going along, like just existing. I really did not have any desire for promotion. I was a first lieutenant. I could have easily made captain if I had applied myself, but I didn't want it. I did not want to go any further because, one, I realized that I didn't want to have to put more work than what I was already putting in. And that led me to believe that this was not the right place for me. Again, I was a terrible soldier. So I just, eventually, I got passed up for promotion twice, best thing that could have happened to me. And they said, your services are no longer required. We thank you. Please get the fuck out. I don't know if people swear on the show. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course we do.
All right, good. So yeah, and then I was summarily dismissed. Meanwhile, about a year before that, I met my now wife, and I met her when I was working as a psychic on a platform called Arenum, and she was one of my clients, and she made the bold move of getting in touch with me, and then we started having a relationship, and I moved from Massachusetts all the way to Alberta, Canada, just for a girl. I made the move for a girl, and it was probably the best move I could have made because I left everything behind. I did not have status to be able to work in Canada, so I was really dependent on her for the income. And I'm the kind of person who's never satisfied with living off the largesse of someone else. I have to have my own purpose. I have to have my own way of being. And so I realized that the psychic thing wasn't working for me either because it wasn't enough. I wasn't able to help people enough. But with coaching, I'd be able to give people a lot more freedom to be able to impact their own lives, teach them how to create that impact rather than giving them an answer to the question without giving them the how. Giving them the what, but not the how. And that's very frustrating. So what I figured out that I wanted to coach. Okay, so how do I want to coach? I read all these books. I figured I went through all these classes, and I wasn't any way further ahead. I'm like, okay, so am I destined to just be a louse and just kind of like pretend to be an astronaut taking up space? And it wasn't until I became very quiet within myself. I realized that I'm not very good at selling, that I'm not very good at marketing, and I don't take orders from others very well. So I'm very limited in what I can do because I suck at everything else. So I became very introspective and say, okay, these are my limitations. These are the things that I know that unless I make this my dedicated way of life, I'm not going to be any good at that. And that's okay. So knowing this, what is it that I can do? And then I got turned on to personal development. More than just, it's what the way I see personal development versus coaching is coaching just gives you the structure of identifying what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Personal development is so much more than that. It's actually developing the inner self. So I took up NLP. I took up hypnosis. I took up emotional freedom technique. All these tools that I thought would give me exactly what I needed to do in order to give someone that actualization, that spark of, aha, I know how to do things. And I still wasn't satisfied. I was like, oh my God, now what? There's something missing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got turned on to a psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Stephen Porges, and his theory called the polyvagal theory. And this basically states that the vagus is the most important nerve in our body. It's the 10th cranial nerve that goes from the back of our head all the way down to our butt and connects every single organ along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes it so important is when we're born, our ability to understand what's going on inside of us, what he calls interoception, is what lets us vocalize what we need to our parents when we can't speak. And as we grow older, we're able to identify the cues around us, around our environment, the cues that I see from you, the cues that I see from other people, the cues that I notice from other things, objects, whatever, that let me know that I am safe, I can be secure, and I have opportunities of being supported.
Mm-hmm.
And that's called neuroception. And when you put them both together, you have a powerful social engagement system, or you have a way of being able to detect danger all around you and react to it whenever you need to. Mm-hmm. It's a dual purpose system. Think of it like the fire alarm in your house.
Right.
And when you don't have any smoke going on, it's just idle, it's silent. But if there's smoke, it beeps, it causes all kinds of commotion, it'll alert the fire department, and it'll get the resources you need to the house to put out the fire or resolve the danger. That's basically what those two systems do, is they just detect until they need to activate. Mm-hmm. And when they're in detection mode, you can communicate like you and I are in a socially engaged state where we're trading value. We're actually seeing how we're able to help each other, how we're able to help people. And that's great. Until the alarm sounds, we go out of that, respond to the alert in order to come back to safety.
Right.
Excuse me. So once I figured that out, I was like, aha, this is where I was meant to be. I dove into the polyvagal theory, which is not for the faint of heart. It is a textbook for graduates in psychology and psychiatry. So yes, I'm a glutton for punishment because I love reading things that are way beyond my scope and still seek to understand them.
Uh-huh.
So, and then I realized that everything that we do in life, everything that helps us succeed is all based on the relationships that we create with ourselves and with others.
Right.
And when we're able to create powerful, successful relationships, we thrive. When we're not, that's when we suffer. Mm-hmm. And this happens everywhere we go. When you are in a office setting, your coworkers, your boss, your subordinates, you have a certain relationship with them. A relationship that lets you get the job done, and at the same time lets each person know, I value your contribution, or at least that's the way it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. When you don't have that, that's when you have dissatisfaction in the workplace. That's when people realize, screw this job, I don't care anymore, I need to get out, or they don't value me, I'm not respected, my contributions aren't understood, why the hell am I here?
Mm-hmm. Right. They say that people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses.
Exactly. And or actually they quit the environment. They quit the institution, not just the boss, but also co-workers and subordinates. If they aren't being understood, respected, and valued in their role, they're just going to check out. Mm-hmm. And they're going to check out emotionally before they check out physically. Mm-hmm. And that emotional checking out is so important, because when you're checked out, you're no longer in a curious state of mind. You're in a fearful state of mind, because now you're figuring out what it is you need in order to just survive that day.
Nice. That makes a lot of sense to me, and I hope that is making sense to somebody who's probably sitting at, well, we're all quarantined right now, but if you think about your job, if it's not really fulfilling, if you're not feeling like you're doing something that's meaningful or that you're valued as much as you should, I think it's important to investigate this part of you and find out if opportunities to build in those areas exist in that job, and if they don't, or if you know for a fact that they exist somewhere else, that we start to build the clarity here and move towards the confidence that it takes to jump out of your job and into your dream. A question for you. I want to know, when you came across this realization that it was important to build a relationship with yourself, how did that shift the course of your life?
Well, it gave me opportunities to be kind to myself and to give myself a break from how I was feeling. I used to be a very angry person, and I would get triggered a lot, very confrontational, wanting to pretty much prove that I was right. And as that saying goes, you can either be right or you can be successful. So I was more concerned with being right. So what I was able to do was understand that I don't have to be right with someone else. I just have to be right with myself. And that took a sense of self-compassion. And it's something that when we were talking before, a tool that I had learned from a psychologist by the name of Deb Dana. And it's called the 4 R's. And it stands for recognize, respect, return, and restore. So with recognize, after you have a certain emotional reaction, doesn't matter what it is, have during that reactionary period, you have no control over what it is that you're doing or how you're feeling. But after that, a few seconds after you have that reaction, you regain that sense of reason. And once you regain that sense of reason, you are able to, or you have the opportunity to understand what it is you were feeling at that moment. And you can name that emotion. And when you name something, you have some leverage of control over it. So I realized that what I was feeling was anger. And then that allowed me to go on to the respect part, which is respecting the trigger that brought me to that state and what it is that allowed me to feel that anger in the first place, where that came from. Because when you do that, you take yourself out of that blame game of feeling guilty, of feeling resentful, or feeling shameful or ashamed. And as soon as I did that, it allowed me the opportunity to return back to a state of safety, realizing that I am safe, I can feel secure, and I have opportunities to be supported by others. And that is the most crucial thing to build social engagement. You have to feel safe, you have to feel like you are secure, and you have opportunities of being supported. After that, you can restore the entire event, the thing that led up to that emotional reaction, that emotional trigger, and what that really means to you and how else you can respond rather than reacting. And a lot of times, this has to do with being able to talk with a person that you had that reaction with, because we react to people. We don't react to anything else. The thing that we react to is either ourselves or other people. And when you're able to have that conversation of explaining what it was that triggered you, it gives people a sense of understanding of who you are and that you're a human being just like them, which starts the ability to create a deeper connection through repairing any kind of relationship that was breached or ruptured through that emotional trigger. So I think I lost the question of what you asked.
You touched it, man. You said well, the question was, what role did becoming introspective in your life do to change the course of it?
Right. So once I was able to do that, I was able to lessen the anxiety, the hurt, the shame, guilt, and resentment I had for myself, and just be present in my current circumstance. Realize that it's not about how things should be, it's about how things are, accepting how they are and working within the parameters of how things are right now. Because once I was able to operate within that, I was able to then shift my focus as to what could be because I was respecting my present. And when you respect your present, that's when you can plan for your future.
Mm-hmm.
And that allowed me to see other opportunities that once I had the means to take advantage of, give myself permission to go after those avenues because I had the means, I had the desire, and I had the opportunity. All three things lined up. So then it was all about just taking action at that point, proving to myself that, yes, this is what I wanted, and here's the proof. I'm now taking action on what I said I would take action on once I created this.
Mm-hmm.
So that gave me a sense of courage to be able to continue doing that and being able to more and more appreciate my present so that I can continue planning for my future.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all about nurturing the relationships that I currently had, the
Mm-hmm.
relationships with my spouse, the relationships with our kids, the relationships with my father, with my mother, the relationships with the people around me, identifying new relationships and being able to cultivate those so that I was seen as someone that they could trust so that they could feel understood, respected, and valued by me.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't just for personal relationships. When you apply this to the business setting and you understand that where you are is just where you are, there's nothing you can do about it right now. You know, you begin to see the matrix of how the game is played. You begin to see the rules. And then you can play those rules. And if you're really good, play those rules against the system.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can position yourself in a way where you can eventually get away from that job and into something else. It's not about resenting where you are. When you're resenting something, you're no longer working with it, you're working against it. And your reality will always win. Always. 6 days a week, twice on Sunday.
Yes, indeed. One thing that I was hearing from you was that when you start to understand what you're talking about, you gain the power to restore or change the narrative.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And restoring the narrative gives you control over the next steps that you take.
So changing the meanings, what significance does this hold to me? Like,
yes.
You know, and I think that is probably one of the most powerful things that people can realize is that they have the power to change the assignments of significance that they give to certain experiences, because once this means that I must live this way, that's where victimhood, you know, is sprouted, is where it grows from. And to break through that and to realize, no, I get to change what this means, therefore I have more options,
Mm-hmm.
is the freedom that everybody is looking for.
It's funny that you phrased it that way. I must live this way, because there are two words that I cringe, well, many words that I cringe at, but two in particular, which are must and should.
Mm-hmm.
And those give indications of something you don't accept, something you are fighting against. When you fight against something, you instantly, at that moment, put yourself as a victim because you are being assaulted by something you do not accept.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you say that, well, these are my current circumstances and I can work within these so that I can create something else,
Mm-hmm.
that gives you power over the situation.
Right.
Because now you're saying that this is what there is. And if I use the resources about what I have, I can create something better.
Right.
It's like having a land full of straw, but saying, I want to build a brick house.
Right.
Why would you want to build a brick house when you have all that straw? Build a straw house, man.
Or hating the straw because it's not brick.
There you go. Yep. And bring it out of spite, so then you have nothing. You have nothing.
Yes, indeed. Well, super awesome, man. This is definitely one of the most rewarding conversations that I've had. I do appreciate you. I want to give you a chance to have the last word. Let us know what you're working on. I know you have something in development, and let us know how we can get connected with you. What is one thing that everybody needs to know?
The most important way for you, that you can live your life is to be curious. And by being curious, you forgive the judgments that you have for someone else because they no longer matter. When you are curious, you only care about what is in front of you, and you're able to learn from that. And when you're learning, you're loving. And when you're loving, you're living. So yeah, that's basically.
That's love. And it all ties into growing and having a growth mindset.
Something that I love to say to people when I end a conversation with them or when I end a video, which is find opportunities to be kind, and kindness will find you in return.
That's love. That's love to the max. So what are you working on, and how can we support you, and how can we connect with you to do that?
So right now I'm working on an automated program called the Relationship Building Academy. And it's going to be basically a way of being able to understand yourself, understand other people, and be able to interact with them in a way that builds a relationship with them systematically, uses the science of relationship building to create meaningful connections with others that are deep and that are meaningful for you, regardless of how you make them. So if you want to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook, jason.ian.matthews. Or you can, I have a page that hasn't really gotten a lot of traction right now called Traumatic Freedom. I'm going to be migrating that over to my new page. I'm not going to say a lot on that right now because it's still a surprise. But you can still find me on Traumatic Freedom, interact with me there, and I always respond to the people who message me. So yeah, just go ahead and find me there, send me a message, and I'd love to connect.
Beautiful, beautiful stuff, man. We appreciate you for taking the time out and imparting us on your wisdom, your knowledge, your experience, sharing your life force with us. Thank you so much. Love, love. Be well. And don't forget to have the guts to follow your guts.
Thanks, Tal.